Hello, Internet. I'm Timothy.
I'm HamsterBomb. I get all the love.
How did I say that? What happened to me? I have been really backwards today, but
you
man,
really
that
have
was
been backwards today.
Wow, that was totally on accident.
That was like the third thing you've done today that was just totally backwards.
What? Anyway, and you are... Oh my gosh. You guys are joining us for another episode of Pokedex Paradox, the show where we go through the Pokedex, find a bunch of ridiculous things that shouldn't be there, and things that are just completely backwards. Stuff that we're obviously this time going to be digging into some really incorrect science that is written into the Pokedex and trying to figure out, could it exist, could it happen, because I mean,
it's fact in
Pokedex is law, it must happen. So we're going to try and figure out, how does this Pokemon exist? And today we're looking at the opposite end of the spectrum of where we were looking at with the Magcargo episode. We were looking at the hottest Pokemon ever. Yes. I believe he's the hottest Pokemon.
I believe he is.
I mean, there might be some other stuff out there they're making later, but who knows. This is now the coldest Pokemon ever. And we saw some other Pokemon who were contenders for being cold too, but they were nowhere near this one. There was, I don't know, I think like Dugong had something interesting in there, but it was a couple others, but seriously, they were nowhere near as absurd as Regice, which we're going to be covering today. Yay! And I'm basically going to be on Pokedex entry duty.
Oh, Regice is a glorious thing to tear apart. After that Luxray episode, I needed to build up back.
You need another...
That's why I took a break for a while.
You need another stupid one?
Yeah.
Actually, you took a break because it was hard for me to get you. That's why I had Matt.
Which is funny, because I live with you.
Because, yeah, we're married, and it was easier for me to get my friend who works full-time than it was you. But anyway, how about this? Ruby! Right when we start. We're going to start from the beginning.
Very first Dex entry.
Very first Dex entry. Here we go. Regice's body was made during an ice age. Doesn't say an ice age. The deep frozen body can't be melted even by fire. This Pokemon controls frigid air of minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now, before we get into that, I want you to also read Sapphires.
Well, hold on. Because I understand. Like, he was made...
No, we can't talk about that. Read Sapphires next.
Okay,
just read
it's
Sapphires.
Gonna be like Sapphire. Regice cloaks itself with frigid air of negative 328 degrees Fahrenheit. Things will freeze solid just by going near this Pokemon. Its icy body is so cold it will not melt even if it is immersed in magma?
Now, see, the Ruby one says fire.
Yeah.
That's the thing I was getting at with these.
That's very different. But here, that's not what I was going to talk about. I was going to say it was made during an ice age. I was going to say, so an could mean a ton of them back. So that maybe he was down deep somewhere frozen.
But he could have been a ton of them back because in another Dex entry it says he's only been frozen for 1,000 years.
Okay.
Go read another one. This is
awful.
I think it says 1,000 years. I don't think it says thousands.
Here's an interesting one in Fire Red Leaf Green. Research revealed that its body is made of the same kind of ice that is found at the South Pole. Emerald. Its entire body is made of Antarctic ice. Oh, like, never mind, now we know where, and you're telling me another one tells you when? Yeah, here it is, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. It is said to have slept in a glacier for thousands of years.
Okay, it does say for thousands of years.
Its body can't be melted even by magma. But the problem is, glacier. There's not like a mountain range down in Antarctica. I mean, it's a desert of ice. Glaciers are formed through mountains, though. Like, it needs tectonic plates to... it doesn't really...
No, it says it's made from ice from there. It doesn't say that it was stuck in ice from there.
It slept in a glacier.
Yeah, it slept in a glacier, but it didn't say slept in a glacier in the South Pole.
Okay, good point. It took a nap there, is what you're saying. It wasn't born there. All right, fine. You just took a 1,000-year nap. Oh my! And then I think the rest of them that I'm scrolling through all seem to say the same thing. Glacier, thousands of years.
But they're still doing a thing where one of it's fire, the other one's magma.
Fire,
one magma.
So we gotta assume it's magma because it's worse, right? And still going through here, yeah. Basically, the big thing that we want to point out here is this Pokemon controls frigid air of minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit.
So many things to talk about!
Hold on. it doesn't... I don't think it says his internal temperature.
It does not. It always just says he controls frigid air.
Okay. So that is...
But if he controls that frigid air, it has to come from his body.
Not necessarily.
And there is one that says being in the area with this Pokemon will cause you to instantly freeze.
Okay, so we can calculate how cold he really is. If you wanted to bypass that and say that that's not his internal temperature. Because here's what I was going to say. What I'm going to talk about later, we are able to control stuff like a cloud of frigid air way, way colder than that. So it's not part of our bodies. We can do it.
Right.
So, okay. Maybe he just knows how to work the circuitry. And he's like pushing the... No, you're not...
His body still has to... I'm assuming that they tell you that.
Because so it's his special attack, his like ice beam or something.
They will tell you that it's minus 328 degrees. Why such a weird number? 328 degrees because it's also saying that it cannot be immersed and melt in magma. So I think that makes it a safe assumption to say that its body would be reaching that temperature because they tell you the temperature and then they tell you it cannot be immersed.
I don't know what it would do, but here, just for reference, before we go on, that's shockingly close to another number, absolute zero.
Oh, okay.
Where since we're sticking in Fahrenheit, that is negative 459. It's a little below. It's technically 0.67, and it's not quite there. It's because Kelvin is the scale that's used to measure absolute zero and up. Like, absolute zero in Kelvin is 0. So it's just anything counting from that point. So at this point, so he's like still over 130 degrees from absolute zero, but that's really close. And at absolute zero, what's important is all movement stops, even at the atomic level. Like, physicists say it isn't possible. It's just the theory of we know when it will stop moving.
Right.
And we can get darn close to it, but we can't just stop. There's always some movement there. So if he was lower and pointed out, he couldn't move.
Right.
And I doubt he can move at that temperature if that's him. I doubt it.
Well, and you were saying before, you were like, all right, if... You know, even if that isn't his body temperature physically, he is still made of ice.
And hold on, I got one more stat to throw at you that makes it even worse. He also weighs 385.8 pounds and is 5'11". Wow, I'm about as tall as Regice. That's interesting. But since he's like an ordinary American there, isn't he? But since he weighs so much, he needs the energy stored in his body to be able to move 386 pounds to take steps, right? And he's not floating, right? He doesn't float. He stands on little points. He stands on little points.
Kind of floats.
He doesn't float though. The other Regis don't float. So he like walks around somehow carrying all that weight. Somehow he's doing it. So
that's a whole nother story.
But he contains all that...
There is so much to talk about here. I feel like we gotta slow down.
This is messy.
Dissect things.
All right. Go for it. Just start with something.
Okay. Here's what I have. So clearly we know that Regice's body is made from ice from the South Pole, apparently.
Yep,
but that confirms that his body is made from ice.
Yeah.
Now, scientists have discovered 2 previously unknown forms of ice in 2006. This is from physics.org.
Sure it's not fizz.org?
It's Fizz. Fizz.
Okay.
Whatever.
It's different.
Okay,
yeah.
Fizz.org.
From 2006, you said?
From 2006, scientists discovered 2 previously unknown forms of ice frozen at temperatures around minus 160 degrees Celsius, which translates to negative 256 degrees Fahrenheit. Researchers say that they have solved the atomic structures of the new forms, which they have named Ice 13 and Ice 14. So we have just proven that he cannot be made of ice. Because...
Well, ice that we know of.
The coldest ice, and they say discovered, but it was created in a lab with a certain pressure of lasers on top of it.
Wait, that's what this is?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. We might be talking about the same thing.
This is not a gas.
This
is specifically ice.
Okay, sure. Water. It is water.
This is water.
Okay,
yes.
The coolest you can get water using the same technique I'll tell you about later. Interesting.
So
that's the coldest water can get. Could he... Okay, hold on. He could be made of ice if he's mostly coated in it, and then, like, internally he's something else. It also just said he is controlling the air. Right?
Okay, well, I also want to get to the fact that...
Right, your point was he's made of ice, and magma doesn't melt him.
And the point is that also in the Antarctic, ice is just ice, like, frozen at, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0
well, it's
degrees
a lot
Celsius.
cold. Well, I mean, that's when water freezes, but it's a lot colder down there than
It's actually not.
Really?
Yeah. The ice temperature stays about the same. It's not going to drop unless it's underneath extreme amounts of pressure like you're doing inside of a lab. So,
really? That's interesting. Because you can go down there and you can, like, spit out hot coffee and it'll freeze before it hits the ground. It'll shatter.
That's the air temperature.
That's the air, yeah.
That
so you're telling me
ice.
the ice actually doesn't get colder.
It does not, no. Oh. Natural forming ice, from what I found, doesn't get colder than the 32.9 degrees Fahrenheit negative, or less than 0.5 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
And so he's technically made of that ice, then he shouldn't be reaching negative 328 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well, controlling air. Controlling air. Here, you have two different problems here.
But it says that he is made of ice.
Yes, and it says nowhere that ice is negative 328 degrees Fahrenheit. That is some
But he has to be able to produce that temperature from his body.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, then that has to be naturally found somewhere.
Exactly, that's where I'm going. Yes, he's naturally finding it.
Yes, let me naturally
that's why I said
find this gas.
He has to work in a lab. All right, fine, I'll give you that one. He can't just be working in a lab.
Right, like, you would see how they even got this cold ice on here?
I know how they did it. Yeah, it's
whack. You have to use instruments that were specifically designed for the,
Yeah. The Bose-Einstein condensate.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, it's already hard. It's already too much energy for this.
No, hold on. How can magma not melt this ice?
So what?
That's what I'm interested in, because he's ice. It said that, and it's also said it will not melt even if it is immersed in magma.
Okay, so the stupid thing with the Pokedex here is I don't know if they realize magma is what is when it is inside the Earth, so he would never actually come in contact with magma anyway. And so I actually did more research on lava because we don't have that much research on magma. So what lava does when it actually touches ice...
Okay, it's also fair to say that one because that could easily be a translation thing.
Right.
Like,
so
you know how the move lightning or thunder is lightning?
Right.
Right? They called it thunder, but that's a sound.
Right.
And you're attacking with a lightning bolt. Whatever.
Anyway, I'm just assuming they meant lava. Okay. So I went with lava. And so what actually happens when lava hits ice is that it'll hit the ice, it'll melt the top layer of the ice, and then it will actually start to hydroplane. And because the lava is in contact with the air around it, it will already start turning into the rock form that you get that forms the new islands and stuff like that.
Okay.
The only way that it could stay liquid is if it is magma under the Earth's surface. So technically you could get away with lava not melting him right away. It would just kind of slide right off because it would hydroplane weirdly.
It said immersed.
If he is immersed in magma in the center of Earth, he is melt. He's melted.
He is melt.
He is melt.
He MB water.
He is a delicious tuna melt. He is melt.
He would probably instantly turn into a gas.
I just want to read you guys the temperatures on which lava is erupting at. So, lava erupting is 700 to 1,200 degrees Celsius, which translates to 1,300 to 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, there is also another type of lava, which is a little cooler, called felsic lava, which is 650 to 750 Celsius, which translates to 1,202 to 1,382 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's lower.
That is lower. And then magma, the one that's inside the Earth that he's clearly melting at.
That's what they said.
They said magma is 700 to 1,300 degrees Celsius or 1,300 to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit.
I don't even know what would happen if you did that. Because that's messy. That's really I don't...
Here, let me actually read how the lava... I do have a quote down here from geek.com from 2012 that actually explains how the lava is reacting with the ice.
Okay.
So instead of flash boiling the ice, lava actually slides down the cold surface. A thin layer of ice does melt immediately, but that just allows the lava to hydroplane across the surface. As it cools, it actually moves pretty fast too. If you ran into such a flow in real life, it would be much harder to avoid lava flowing on other surfaces. Because that then will actually stick into the surface. Okay, so
this is lava flowing over ice.
Right.
Okay, which you could consider immersion, right? It's being swallowed and covered up. So, maybe Regice will not melt because that extra layer of him... Maybe he's like shedding and creating more layers,
layer to avoid the lava.
Slides the lava.
That was the one way I thought maybe it doesn't melt him. But it also says that not even fire will melt him. Well, now fire is not a liquid.
Yeah.
Fire reacts very differently, and he has ice in his body that is from the South Pole, which is
negative 32 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, never mind. That's just normal ice. That's not working.
That is normal ice. He will melt.
That's like saying that your glass of ice cubes that you just got at a restaurant, if you held it over a fire, it wouldn't melt. Like, of course it will melt.
They must have been like, oh my gosh, ice down there must be super cold.
Yeah.
The air is cold.
I made that assumption. I mean, for crying out loud, I would totally assume it would, but the thing is,
there are different types of ice about how it's formed and whether it's combined with other things, but overall the temperature doesn't fluctuate very much.
All right.
Because that is at which the point it freezes. That is just the point at which water freezes. Mm-hmm. And unless you are in a lab, you're not really going to get much colder than that.
So you're telling me if we had Regice battling Magcargo.
Yeah, this is what I totally want to do. Like, I want to see this now.
They both use body slam at the same time. I don't care if they can't learn it. This is what matters. They both physical contact. Boom. Smooch.
Okay, so what happens
Regice on Magcargo action.
No, Magcargo just slams into it and then just, like, slides off.
He slams and slides back down. Okay, so Regice is the one doing the body slam on the Magcargo. What happens? He just, like, eventually kind of slips and shoots out. Like
right, yeah. Like,
okay.
They can't exist.
They can't touch each other. They resist each other that much.
The thing is, with Magcargo, if you have a shiny... no, a shiny's pink.
Of course I do.
I'm thinking of Slugma.
Slugma's shiny. Yeah, he's burnt.
Where it starts cooling. Because
you think it's a different temperature?
He should automatically start cooling once he hits that air temperature. It starts cooling off.
But Magcargo, if you guys remember from his episode... has an internal temperature of, what was it? 18,000 degrees. 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You take that versus negative, we assume, negative 328 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now, you pointed this to me earlier that, so it does say Regice, deep frozen body, can't be melted even by fire, but he is weak to fire type.
Yeah, he's still weak to fire attacks. I love that.
Is correct. I mean, fire should melt him still.
Yes, but I said, okay, so you're telling me he can't be melted even by fire. He can be immersed in magma, but he's still weak to fire attacks in the game. Like, couldn't that have been his, like, ability? Like, it is not weak to fire. You know, like, this Pokemon, it takes no fire damage or something.
No one said he has clear body, whatever that... What does that do?
Oh, they all have clear body. It's, like, stops stat changes and stuff like that. It's, yeah. I mean, Metagross has it. It's pretty good. But it's not, like... No, it makes no sense here. Well, I mean, though, that clear body, now that you mention that, I mean, that could be, like, some coating that they all have, because all the Regis have that.
Right.
Maybe that's, like, some coating that protects them?
It says he's made of ice.
But what I'm more concerned about is the temperature that they're talking about here, of controlling frigid air of minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit.
It is not lying when it says that it is so cold, everything will freeze around it.
You would freeze? Yeah, well... Because now you want to talk about what kind of temperature would require that? Yeah, it's something around like minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit because you stop. You know, there's reason absolute zero. Everything stops moving. There's no energy to even move the electron around the proton. It's stuck in orbit.
Right.
And if that's the case...
And humans die a lot sooner than that happens.
Oh, yes. And let's just say, you know, he's standing there within 5 to 10 feet of his trainer. You know, they stand pretty close behind them when they send them out.
Yeah.
So, say they're standing, let's combine it. We're going to stand 7 feet back from Regice.
I'm dead.
No. That's not how this show works. How do you die?
I'm sorry.
How cold can a human get before they die?
You have to get down to 71 degrees Fahrenheit internal body temperature before you die.
Internal body temperature. That doesn't mean like, you know, because obviously you can be very comfortable in a 60-degree room, but if your internal body temperature is...
We're warm-blooded mammals. We can survive in different temperatures because
like
we produce our own
you're
body
sick,
heat.
you know, as soon as you're straying from like 98, you know?
Right.
So it's a big deal for you to drop, you know, 20 degrees.
I think I was reading that they said what is considered scientifically like the internal body temperature has to be is 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So
I kind of had a fever earlier then. Just a little bit.
I feel like most people have about...
Or maybe it's just me working in my office because this room gets hot.
I think most people have about like 98.5 or something like that.
All right,
so,
there we go. But still, 71, that's a significant drop. And for that to happen, you'd have to be standing
so like
close
you said,
to this.
how do we die?
How do we die?
Paradoxal undressing and terminal burrowing.
Hold on, what's this come from?
I don't know. I just wrote humans. It was some fact site. I wasn't that concerned.
Humans. Okay, here comes quote from totallylegitimatesite.com. Go for it.
Okay. And they often followed swiftly by death. At a core body temperature between 85 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit, an inability to move and a low blood pressure lead to a coma. Below 71 degrees, muscles grow rigid, and the heart and breathing rate continue to decrease until the person reaches death.
So, yeah, I mean, you stop moving. You can't move anymore.
Right.
You can't move.
But your atoms aren't done moving yet.
Well, no. But you can't... Oh, that'll happen. The cells will die later. Like, so, you can't move the blood through your body. You can't even move the neuron information, the electrical signals to stimulate your muscles. You can't do any of that stuff. And you just kind of stop moving and freeze.
Everything just slowly stops moving as you die.
Well, I guess it's... I don't know what's better, standing behind your Regice or your Magcargo. They're both going to kill you. It's just
well, at least Regice is peaceful. You'll hit hypothermia, at which one point your body will feel like it's getting warmer. It'll get nice and cozy, and you die.
No, I don't know about that one, because this happens instantly.
Yeah.
He's that cold? Now, here, if he's controlling frigid air... That means, as you said, he has to be able to create it to control it. And I think we really should assume that he can create it, because otherwise he's working in a lab.
Well, now I just want to see a Regice with his little lab goggles on, and he's like experimenting.
Yeah, typing on a keyboard with his
little nubs.
Well, they're points, so he'd be like, ding, 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 ding. I guess so, but the lab he'd be working in, if you're curious, because I was going to be talking about the Bose-Einstein condensates just to explain a little bit of what might explain him, but the problem is they said where he came from, and I was going to go off of, oh, okay, maybe some crazy alien race thousands of years ago.
Yeah, I totally disproved you on this earlier.
Like,
I said,
created
no.
this thing in a lab, and then put him deep down in a cave somewhere, and he can retain this coldness.
No, it says he's made from ice from the South Pole.
Yes, that's
what it says. Which means he is also planet Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So?
I mean, I know sometimes we talk about, like, South America and stuff like that, but the Pokemon universe isn't also...
planet Earth.
I'm saying the Pokemon universe isn't always
Oh, you're saying... Well, they love to make new continents, but yes, it's Earth. Yeah, good point, yeah. They like to jump back and say real Earth places instead of their places, but most of the areas in Pokemon are in Japan. They're Japanese islands and stuff like that, but... Anyway, so...
Do you have anything on him to prove that he can happen?
Well, here, sort of. But not... Can we create him in a lab?
Okay, let's assume...
Okay, like, because if you...
Ignoring that he is made
Or here, by a really weird set of circumstances, by lucky trails of photons coming from different stars, and somehow they magically... No, it can't happen. But naturally, what I'm going to say needs to happen in a lab and can't happen anywhere else in the universe naturally.
Right, okay,
which means that he can't naturally happen.
Let's just assume that he is not made of ice from the South Pole.
Well, here, hold on. You know what changes this?
What?
Regigigas created them. Ooh. You didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Regigigas, it says in his dex entries that he's the one who created the others. He created them in his image or something like that. So you could say he is that advanced alien race thing that created other things. And Regigigas, he knows his science. And he has a lab.
He has a lab.
And in his lab, where he
So how did he take the ice from the South Pole and get it down to the temperatures?
He had it setting on his desk. And it was starting to thaw.
Story time.
And he was like, oh, shoot, what am I going to do? But he was hungry. He had to go to get a sandwich. And then his sister Dee Dee tiptoed into his laboratory and switched that ice out with a block of sodium. Okay?
Okay.
And then Regice comes back, or Regigigas comes back. He's like, he wiggles his noodle fingers. And like, this is not my ice.
Oh, can we switch out Dee Dee and be like Meloetta or something?
Meloetta? Okay, fine. Whatever. So, he takes this sodium block, okay? This chunk of sodium. And you can do this with some other kinds of materials too, but you want to do it with, I think you start with a solid. And you superheat it. Okay, I know it sounds kind of backwards, but you want to superheat this thing, turn it into a gas. Okay, you want to just jump straight into gaseous form with these things, and based on the way that the molecules want to organize themselves together, it's why you want to separate everything to where they're loose.
Is anybody else visualizing Regigigas in a lab coat and goggles?
Noodle fingers. Don't forget them noodle fingers.
Noodle fingers.
He's typing with noodle fingers. You know, okay, so he's like, he's flipping switches and all that stuff, and his noodle fingers are going ham. And basically, what you want to do once you get this thing in gas form, I forget how they do this, but you basically suck it out of the oven area and into a controlled dark room, basically a dark area. And
that is a vacuum, right?
You can, yes, you do it in a vacuum, but there were also people saying that you can do this whole process in space, and it would be a lot better. And we could probably get a new record cold, but whatever. Going back to the Regigigas noodle fingers okay, noodle fingers. Noodle fingers. He just sucks this out into a dark room. It may be a vacuum, it may not, I don't really remember that part, but you start shooting a bunch of lasers at it. From all directions, right? Tons of lasers, and they're just aiming at this thing, and you're thinking, okay, it's getting hotter and hotter, right? But the lasers are actually not making it warmer. What the lasers are doing are trying to counter the direction that they're moving. Yeah. Okay, so say if, like, you were running at me, and I had my hand out, and I was trying to push you back, and you know, that's the laser. My hand's I'm like stopping you. Like, hold on, stop moving. So, yes, energy's being put into it, but to counter the directions these things want to move. So they all are trying to move until eventually they stop moving, and I would, like, slowly, for the analogy, like, take my hand off you, and then you're standing still.
Right.
So what they're doing is trying to stop those molecules from the atoms and everything from dancing around and moving too much.
Millions of lasers trying to do this.
We're just moving them lots of times. I mean, it goes at the speed of light, so you can keep flashing. But this thing is, it's nuts. It's crazy. So they managed to stop these things, for the most part. There's still some stragglers dancing around in there, because you can't get them all. And what they do is they try and then use an electromagnet to take that this clump of now very cold, almost inactive atoms, and kind of suck them to the side, and then they'll also, like, try and there's other ways they can use, like, electromagnets to take out some of the ones that are still dancing around, still kind of hot, so we can get rid of those. Okay, so you now just have a clump of super cold atoms that are just kind of floating there. Okay,
this is making you sound like Hitler for atoms.
It gets better for Hitler for atoms if you want, because if you let this sit, the protons in there will come together, and the electrons will slowly start to move around, and it'll make a super atom, a giant atom that I've read You can even see under a microscope. This atom. It's so big, you can see this atom under a microscope. But
like
granted,
my at-home microscope or like a serious lab microscope?
I doubt it's going to be an at-home microscope, but we can see it, and that's insane, right?
Right.
It's an atom. So, that's the thing. It's a bunch of clumped things together that are going so slowly. That's how they solved it. And people are mainly doing these tests because they want to see, okay, can we use this to learn anything about the universe and all that stuff? But we want to learn about Regice. So, if you were able to contain this super cold thing, we were actually able in a lab to get temperatures so darn close to absolute zero. It was within like 17 to the negative 10 with like 20 zeros away from... You're not listening, are you?
I am.
Okay. Away from 0 in Kelvin. Okay, so basically 0.000000000.17 of Kelvin, right? Okay. So super cold is what that thing is. And if you... Okay, Regigigas, remember? Go Noodle Fingers. Say he makes this thing and he puts it into the core of Regice. For one, I don't know how. We're now back into Magcargo's problem. I don't know how he's able to contain that kind of cold.
Yeah, how is he like moving it from point
he should,
A to
that
point
was my that was
is
why I
his
said
laboratory
he can't
in
walk.
the Antarctic.
What would that matter?
Also, that way you could like shove it in the ice.
Push him in the ice? Sure. I mean, it makes more sense than a plane ticket, but sure. He's then put into the ground, and since he has magical Pokemon powers, he can manipulate the air around him.
All right, I think
which naturally becomes minus 328 because that's like 130 degrees hotter than he is.
Okay, so you're saying his temperature has to be like
way colder?
Way colder.
Yeah, and way colder as in he can't even be a solid anymore. He's got to be the state of matter below that. That's how cold he has to be. His atoms need to stop moving.
I think you have successfully proven my theory and debunked that Regice cannot exist.
Well, you kind of can here. Here, I got a better way to fix it. So since he needs to be basically created with the Bose-Einstein condensate, that's pretty much what he is. Mm-hmm. It's a BEC. Mm-hmm. Why don't we just call him Becky?
What did that have to do with anything?
That makes him okay now. His name's Becky. If it's got a cute name, everyone's going to love it, and it's going to be okay, and the physics don't matter.
Okay, well, Regigigas didn't name him Becky.
I did, and I'm special. Regigigas is from Sinnoh. He's not special. Okay?
You guys have seen his Regice on the channel. I'm sure that it is not named Becky.
It should be. I didn't know this by then, but I would have. I totally would have named it Becky. But anyway, I guess that's all we got for Regice. So
pretty much, we can't stand next to Regice because...
Oh no, you'll die.
Everything, we're gonna die.
You'll die. If the air around him is minus 328, you're dead.
We're dead.
You're dead.
Pretty much just a slowing, but it's gonna be like a really quick, slow stop. Like,
right, I don't see how he can even walk. That's my issue.
Because of like the water in our bodies, I feel like you could put us there for a second and bring us away, and we would still slowly just could keep freezing and die.
He also couldn't really... I mean, he could supposedly be dropped in magma. Now, if you put I don't know what would happen if you put a Bose-Einstein condensate inside of, 2,000 degree magma?
Yes, magma gets 2,400, so...
If you put it in 2,000 degree magma, I don't know what happens there. I don't. Because now you're talking about a bunch of loose protons and electrons suddenly getting energy. And
it's so hard to test these things because it's not like we're just going to the center of the Earth because that temperature is so much different than what gets erupted out of our volcanoes.
Right, yeah, it can get hotter than the surface of the sun in some places, as we talked about in the Magcargo episode.
Not hotter than Magcargo.
Not hotter than Magcargo. Nope. Man, that's heat on a new level. Whole new level. Man, I stumbled over that too. You know, my name's Kimothy, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Nice to meet you, Kimothy.
Yeah, hey, what's your name?
Oh, mine's Hamster.
Oh, Hamster, you say. You know, since it's a podcast, I was wondering, like, in the Do You Physics, do people who are just listening to it know that my name's Alex, or do they just think, like, what's wrong with this guy? Because they're not on the YouTube channel. They might not be on the YouTube channel where it's called HamsterBomb. We're like, oh, well, this guy just says his name is Hamster, and that's that. Whatever. But I guess your name's Hamster now. That's your problem. You gotta deal with that.
Hamster, the shortened form of HamsterBomb.
Anyway, do we have anything else on Regice?
Well, I was trying to sum it up there.
But the thing is, like, he's got two very clear problems, and neither can actually...
Does this make him the anti-Santa? If he lives in the South Pole?
Oh. Is he Krampus? Does Krampus live in the South Pole?
I don't know.
He would kill you. He would kill the kids.
Oh my gosh, he's anti-Santa!
He's Krampus and Becky at the same time.
I made him better!
I made him Becky.
Oh my gosh, now I need to see a fight between him and Delibird!
Yeah, Delibird, well, Delibird would die because he would freeze if you got too close to him. But anyway, that is all the time we have for this time on Regice. And so anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time for some more game science. Be sure to follow us either on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And we will see you all in the next episode of Pokedex Paradox.
Bye-bye.